This is The Edge, and you're listening to U2X Radio. This is Close to the Edge, and my guest today is Mr. Tom Morello. So, Tom, thanks for doing the interview. We're really excited to have you on U2X Radio. So, how are you doing?
Maintaining. There are plenty of challenges, but maintaining.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask, because this must be both a very exciting moment and a kind of sad moment, a kind of terrifying moment, because so much is in play. Mm-hmm. There's been awfulness that has led us to this moment, and there's rage boiling over all over the country. For the first time, it almost seems like the glacial shift that has been what we've been waiting for decades, for generations, seems to be coming about. That must be an exciting moment at the same time.
Yeah, well, I think it's a confluence of different historical vectors that have come crashing together now, from the coronavirus lockdown to the ongoing police brutality and murders of African Americans, to the Trump administration. And it's certainly a national and possibly a global awakening and reckoning with regards to race relations.
Yeah, which is long overdue.
I'd say very much like we don't know how this is going to pan out, but certainly in the United States, there has never been that kind of sort of reckoning or truth and reconciliation understanding of our own history. You see it, like my mom was a tireless civil rights advocate and anti-colonial advocate. Over the course of the last few decades, has always, said to me, racism is as bad now as it's ever been in the United States. And I would take sort of the counter position, but you're really seeing sort of with the blessing and guidance of the Trump administration, like the veneer has really been torn off, and that the polarization and the disunity in this country over the issue of race that America has never really dealt with is really come to the fore.
Yeah. And talking, as I did the other day, with Brian Stevenson of the Equal Justice Initiative, he's so eloquent on this. I mean, it's amazing. Obviously, you two have been engaged with these issues for years, and famously Pride in the Name of Love, that song kind of was inspired by Martin Luther King. But Brian's perspective coming at it through the criminal justice system he's really at the coalface. And it's like he's seeing this institutional racism in a way that most of the time I would be so insulated from it. And it's shocking when you actually really get under the statistics and you understand how it actually plays out. My question, I suppose, and I did ask Brian, is where does the patience come from? The patience and the hope and this sense that this will end at some point. And Martin Luther King obviously was, as a pacifist, firmly believed, and as he said in many speeches, I've been to the mountaintop. But that patience is astonishing. Where does it come from?
It is astonishing because, they should just be very grateful that we only want equality and not revenge.
Yeah.
That's, and I think that, like, I've been, for the last couple of years, I've been an ACLU ambassador with regards to the criminal justice system stuff. And the statistics are so overwhelming. But the bottom line is that the question is there systemic racism in the U.S. justice system? That's a yes or no question. And if there is, that is a major problem confronting all time, and I would argue that it is centuries old. And it seems like now is an opportunity for us to really wrestle with that and deal with it. And the thing is, when there's a systemic problem, has to be a systemic solution to it. And it's great to march and it's great to vote, but there are underlying, like racism is as American as apple pie and baseball. It is in the country's DNA. It is one of the building blocks. George Washington once traded a black man for a keg of molasses. Thomas Jefferson, the author of some of our most greatest human rights historical documents, raped a 14-year-old slave, Sally Heming. So it's like this country is born of racism and in racism and has never reckoned with that. And we've had, as Dr. King famously said, that the arc of history bends towards justice, but there's a lot of zigzags along the way. And we're seeing this resistance and this, there's no better sort of phrase for it than this kind of like this white fragility as, people are clinging desperately to Confederate monuments. Nirvana lasted longer than the Confederacy. And yet these Confederate monuments are somehow part of a heritage that we must not let go of. Those roots are very, very deep, and the systemic racism is centuries old. And it's going to take, I think, more than a few marches to root it out.
Well, that's, I think, what we all have to keep our eye on is the prize of changing the system. And characters like yourself and Brian Stevenson are doing the heavy lifting and reminding us all. I suppose it's challenging for me, as I'm sure it is for a lot of white people, that you try to pride yourself on not being racist, but that's not enough. It's not enough to say I'm a non-racist. You've got to be anti-racism, and that calls for a much deeper degree of engagement and action. So apart from getting out on the street, which, is a great thing. And it's wonderful to see how it's a rainbow coalition of people on the street. It's not predominantly African-American or people of color. It's everyone. That's really reassuring to see. But what else can we do? I mean, how do we test ourselves for that kind of hidden racism that is just so hard to detect, that it's just there in the background and you just go through your day? And
it's interwoven into everyday life, and this is an opportunity, I think, for people, the overt racists are going to be what they're going to be. And I do believe in redemption, and people can come around. Like, I grew up in a homophobic community, and I grew up with very homophobic ideas, like mean homophobia that was shared. It was sort of like it was part of the air that we breathed. And life experience taught me that love is love and equality is for everyone. So I do believe that there's redemption for even those who are out and out racist. But the racist system is perpetuated not just by Confederate flag wavers, but by the good-hearted liberals. To attest to my own personal experience is I have a substantial number of fans of mine who flip the fuck out when they find out that I'm black. They're like I might refer to something in a post or whatever. I'm like, no, you're not. I'm like, there's this cognitive dissonance.
Right.
That, perhaps, my vernacular is not stereotypically urban, and I played in bands that are on radio stations that tend to feature white artists and whatnot. And their version of me that they cannot let go of, like, it's an impossibility that dude could be a black dude.
Wow.
So I think that even among fans of diehard fans of Rage Against the Machine, there is some inward looking that must be done before we can change things for the better. Yeah.
It's interesting that rage crops up so much in your work, and yet you are the most reasonable of people. I mean that as a compliment, because I think reason and judgment and strategy and intelligence needs to be brought to bear with all these things. So rage is natural and understandable, but not necessarily the best driver of progress in this regard. But what drives that rage in you? I mean, are there incidents from your past? Is it?
Yeah, it's a common question. Like my politicization began on the playground. I literally integrated the town of Libertyville, Illinois, according to the real estate agent who found the apartment for my Irish-Italian mom and myself. So I didn't have to read any Chomsky or Zinn to become politicized. Politics found me around 4 or 5 years old on the playground. But a very formative moment, I was 5 and was going to this daycare center, and there's this older kid who would call me all the names you might imagine someone might call the only black kid in an all-white town, and was sort of physically assaulting me on a daily basis. And I came home to my mom, and she pried out of me what was going on. And I said, there's this kid and N-wording me and whatnot. And I thought, and she says, well, this is what we're going to do. I thought, great. She's going to march down there and she's going to set shit straight. Well, that was not her plan. She told me about a guy named Malcolm X. I'm 5. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, so this is what you're going to do tomorrow. Malcolm X says that whenever you see racism, whenever racism is anywhere in your view, you're the one that has to confront it. And I'm like, Mom, well, I'm 5. So she took my little brown hand and made it into a little brown fist and said, tomorrow, if that person, you're going to go back at him. And she gave me something to say. I didn't understand any of the words, but it was some like deadbeat honky or something. I don't even know what it was, but she gave me like something to respond with. And so I went to daycare, and the kid was on me, and I summoned up terror, the courage to sort of fight back. And I was getting the crap beat out of me, but it caused a bigger ruckus than it had on previous occasions. And the person who was running the daycare came over, and I got to sit smugly at the side of the sink while the young bully racist mouth was washed out with soap. And it was an important lesson, because had I not stood up for myself, nothing would have happened. So the question, like, where does the rage come in? Like, there first has to be that indignation to ignite your strategizing ideas to change the world for the better. And while I very much believe in peaceful transition, like, standing up for yourself is something that is an important part of any amount of social change.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And then when did music become your life's work?
I didn't start playing guitar till I was 17 years old. I had only heard of one other guitar player who made recordings that started that late, and it was Robert Johnson, who started playing when he was 18. And he had to sell his soul to the devil to get good. And given my Catholic upbringing, that wasn't really an option. So for me, punk rock was the a bridge.
Right.
I loved all the heavy metal bands, but it seemed like you had to have a castle on a Scottish lock in order to play, refined heavy metal music. And I didn't have a $10,000 Les Paul guitar or a limousine filled with groupies. I had a musty basement, but it seemed like the Clash and the Sex Pistols also had musty basements. Right. And so perhaps there was some hope.
And the Clash were huge for us in Dublin. We saw them in 1977. I think they're on their first ever tour. They played in Dublin, and we were like 15, 16-year-old kids and got to see them play. And it was like really...
That's strong medicine right there. That's strong medicine.
I mean, people would say about the Clash that it wasn't them performing. I mean, just watching them walking down the street could change your life.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I had my transformative moment, like the Clash were my first band that I liked that was not heavy metal. Someone showed me the cover of London Calling. And I thought, well, this must be a great heavy metal album. I was surprised that it was not. But what I was more surprised by were the ideas in the songs. Because while I loved metal, there was a lot of silliness to it. I wasn't down with the devil, and the misogyny in the songs sort of made me a little bit uneasy. And these were guys who were like, I had a political bent at a very early age. I'm like, wow, you can sing about that in a song too? It's unbelievable. And they looked so cool and whatnot. But I saw the Clash play at the Aragon Ballroom in Chicago, and I thought that you had to have some mystical ingredient in order to be a musician. And in my punk rock musty basement, I had a Music Man amp on a chair that I played with my punk rock band. And at the Aragon Ballroom, Joe Strummer had the same Music Man amp on a chair. And I couldn't believe it. I was just like, that doesn't mean I can do it one day. Hey, wait, check it out.
Yeah.
That's the amp.
That's the amp. Brilliant.
That's the amp right there. It's not like one day this can happen. It's like I'm already a musician too. Like the barrier just came completely down.
Right. And that was the message of punk rock. It was open to anyone with passion and a modicum of music talent and just some ideas.
Yeah, ideas. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, I'm sure you're aware, but there's a great podcast about the Clash, which is narrated by Chuck D, who I know you know very well.
Yeah.
And Chuck talks about how important the Clash were to Public Enemy forming,
right,
which is not a connection I had ever made. I mean, I'm a huge Chuck D fan and Public Enemy fan, but hearing that, I suddenly realized how ideas do translate around the world, and they cause a different kind of blossoming. It's not like, Public Enemy were such a unique sound. They were nothing like the Clash musically, but that same railing against injustice and being awake to what was going on around them was the key component.
I think that's a very important life lesson, is you just never know what ramifications your actions might have. Like the Clash go on stage and one day it's echoing in Chuck D's voice, or in U2 or in Rage Against the Machine. And even in non-musical matters, like for example, sort of the standing up to a racist bully, like by just witnessing someone standing up to a racist bully, it may give them courage, or recognize that they don't need to sort of go along with the crowd who's homophobic or who's racist, that there's another way to think about the world. And the Clash, for me, it just gave me, well, here's a different way to contextualize my ideas. I can actually be a guitar player and have those ideas and have them not be in separate lanes.
Yeah, exactly. And as a guitar player, I must say, what's wonderful about the instrument is how different it can sound in somebody's hands to somebody else. Your style is so interesting. And I love when you make it sound like scratching. I mean, it's just the most incredible thing. How did that come about? Like, obviously you're listening to a lot of hip hop around that time, but
yeah, I mean, in some ways, you and I, we're different apples on the same tree, and that sort of a non-conventional approach to the instruments has helped us sort of define ourselves as artists. And for me, much like my journey in musical taste from metal to punk rock, my journey as a guitar player was similar. While I started as a punk rock band, I then put in my 8 hours a day, 20,000 hours of heavy metal shredding. Right. And it was all the Eddie Van Halen and Randy Rhoads, and I had all that under my belt, but I wasn't able to find my own voice on the instrument. It was only in the very formative days of Rage Against the Machine where I had a revelation. We were playing a gig in the Valley, opening up for 2 cover bands. And in each of those cover bands was a technically talented shredding guitarist. I was just like, if I'm the third jackass playing the same scales at this worthless gig in the Valley on a Wednesday afternoon, maybe that's not the hamster wheel I want to run on. And so I started looking at the guitar in a different way. The electric guitar is a relatively new instrument on the planet. It's just a piece of wood. It's 6 wires with a few electronics. And the one thing that had kind of kept me in mothballs was many of my favorite guitarists in interviews I had read, they emphasized that it's all been done on the instrument. It's all been done. So if you want to be a guitar player, you learn what they played and you have your own slight nuanced variation of that, and you're a great guitar player. And it made me think, has it all been done? Like maybe the guitar jack makes a noise, and if you rub an Allen wrench on the strings, that makes a noise. You add a wah-wah pedal to that, and you make that the verse of a song. That doesn't sound like Chuck Berry or Eddie Van Halen. And once I had that revelation, then it was an endless horizon.
You're listening to Close to the Edge, and I am talking with Tom Morello about guitar playing and what got us into music. And what's amazing, Tom, I think, is how we're on different parts of the world completely, but there's something so similar about what happened to us. I mean, I never thought I would end up in music. I don't know what I was going to be. My dad is an engineer. My brother's a computer engineer. I thought maybe that's where I'd end up. But there's something that happened to me age 15 when I put on an electric guitar and got to end up playing with Adam, Larry, and Bono. And I can almost remember the moment where I just went, okay, this is what I want to do with my life.
Yeah.
And was there a similar moment for you? Was there a moment?
There was. There absolutely was. It was maybe the third gig of my life. I was playing in a band called the Electric Sheep, which also surprisingly featured Adam Jones of the band Tool. He was the bass player in the Electric Sheep in Libertyville High School. And we were playing the song Born to be Wild. We were well overmatched by that song. We did not have the technical ability to play it. And high school had 3 bands. One was Destiny, and they were beautiful young men that played beautiful REO Speedwagon and Stick songs, and the girls adored them. And then there was Epitaph, and they were bad boys, and they weren't playing any stupid high school functions. They were smoking weed and playing Sabbath in their garage. And then there was the Electric Sheep, the drama club band, my band. We didn't have the technical ability to play other people's songs, so we wrote our own. So we were at a great disadvantage when we had to learn the song Born to be Wild. So we're rolled out into the 800-person auditorium. Destiny has already played, I think they played Abraham, Martin, and John. So this beautiful kind of Cat Stevens-y ballad, and everyone swooned. And Adam and I really didn't know how to tune our instruments very, very well. So we came out of tune, out of time, but we were on this kind of riser and things were not going very well. But before the first chorus kicked in, I have a track and field background, and I leapt off the riser and the roof came off the auditorium. People went absolutely fucking apeshit. So I rocked harder, and by the end of the song, people had lost their fucking mind. Like, everyone forgot about Destiny. I literally felt like in that moment I was inhabited by it was like the Holy Spirit of rock and roll entered me. Right. And I was like, this is it, man. I want that all the time.
Right. Similar for us. It was a school gymnasium, and we played one song and something went off. It is so funny. And it is, I totally relate. That feeling about being on stage and connecting with a live audience, it's addictive and it's powerful. And if you can do it, I mean, not everyone can, but it's very hard to find anything in your life that's going to match that adrenaline rush.
It's something in the reptilian brain, like music, when it connects, is a different kind of art. It's, music predates spoken language,
right?
And sort of like the idea of like rhythm and meaning, when it comes together in the right way, there's no way that conveys a feeling of like truth and tribal connectedness like music does. And I tapped into it for the first time at that show, and it was something I didn't understand. And since then I've over intellectualized it and tried to understand it. But like, there's nothing like that moment, or when you first step on a distortion pedal or something like that, you go like, holy shit, rock and roll. Like, it's more than just listening to records and having feelings. It's something that can inhabit you.
It can. And as a guitar player, do you have other players or albums or songs that you always listen to and went, oh, I'd love to be able to make that sound, or that's the sound I want from my amp when I play?
Yeah, I mean, like any guitar player, that was sort of first it was like the shredders, like Randy Rhoads and people like that. And then it was like Alan Holdsworth and players who played like sort of more outside. But then when I was just finding my own voice on the instrument, I turned to non-musicians for inspiration, for creative inspiration. And 2 of the biggest ones were Richard Pryor and the 1970, this is going to sound insane, but I'll explain it. The 1973 Triple Crown winner Secretariat, the racehorse.
Wow.
But like, the idea is transcendent performance.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone who knows anything about horse racing it was a supernatural event when Secretariat won the Triple Crown. It would be like if someone scored 400 points in a basketball game or something. It wasn't a great performance. It's something that destroyed the sport.
Right.
And I thought, how do you aim for that with a guitar?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't do it by doing what everybody else did.
Right.
I mean, you don't. You have to sort of reimagine the foundation and try to make something that's going to win by 31 links.
Yeah, great. I love that analogy. Yeah, because of course, the thing about music, as with every other art form, is that if you play it safe, if you try and do what everyone else does, you will always just sound like a facsimile of what's come before.
Yeah.
The only way to really break new ground and get into exciting new territory is to take the ultimate risk of wiping out by trying something that's never been done before and committing and really committing.
Yes.
That's all my favorite musicians and artists are unique. And I know they're unique because no one's like them and there's no one there trying to copy. They're one-offs. And I guess we have always attempted to do that, partly as a band because we had to. Necessity was the mother of invention. Right. Your first band, we weren't really very good at playing other people's songs, so we kind of were forced to write our own. And by necessity, they had to be very direct and very simple, which was punk rock. So it was the perfect form to arrive for us. And then obviously, as you were saying earlier on, heavy metal music isn't really necessarily the most politically woke. It isn't. It's Spinal Tap. When I first saw that film, I didn't laugh. I wept.
It should be mandatory viewing for every band.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, there are plenty of non-metal bands that have a lot in common with.
Right. It was a very, very shocking realization that so much about what guitar-based music is so predictable and so easily lampooned. And I felt it helped us redouble our efforts to not do the obvious thing.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say, speaking of Spinal Tap, I remember one night when we were on the on tour with you guys where you got stuck in the lemon.
Yeah.
It was Portland or Seattle or somewhere, Utah maybe. But I was watching, I'm like, I don't think the Lemon's opening tonight on the Pop Mart tour. You came out in the Lemon. It was like open halfway. I was like,
oh man, no, we for sure were excited that could possibly at one point happen because of course the entire Lemon thing was a kind of exercise in taking the piss out of ourselves and kind of enjoying the silliness of rock and roll productions. And the great inspiration for the Lemon for us was the Mothership, which was Funkadelic.
Yeah, of course.
It was so much fun. Such a kind of laugh. But
I bet the Mothership broke down from time to time.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. Yeah.
What do you have to say about that tour? That this was 96 or 97, maybe 97, and Rage opened for the beginning tour, maybe the first quarter of the tour, first third of the tour in North America. And I was a fan, had never met you guys before. And I remember the first show was in Vegas, I believe. And you guys were little under-rehearsed, as you said, like you would sort of finish the record. So we didn't get a sound check that first day. We were like, we're open for you too. This is going to be exciting. And each one of you came into the dressing room afterwards, personally apologized for not giving us a sound check, sent back 4 bottles of champagne. We're like, we're happy to even have a dressing room and a cheese spread. But anyway, you guys were absolutely as advertised. And really, to this day, we've known each other for a long time. We're really like the kindest and most gracious band that I've ever toured with. So thank you. And
thank you.
Your listeners should know that.
That's lovely. I mean, we had the opposite experience from time to time early on, and we understood the value that good manners and looking after your opening acts. And our aim was to always make sure our opening act had a sound check. We heard the horror stories of headline acts that would purposely turn the sound low and sabotage the opening act. So
yes.
We wanted to go the other direction if
that happens. Possible. Yeah. And you guys also, just so your fans know, you were headlining these stadium shows. And so when we went on, often the room was not yet full. And so you guys your security would allow people who were Rage Against the Machine fans to come down to the front for our show. So we weren't playing in like a scattered arena with, people sitting in one every 10 seats. So it felt like a real rock show up front. Then they would politely go back to their seats afterwards. But it was really, I appreciate that. I mean, not every band does that sort of thing. So we very much appreciate that.
Well, we want it to be a great event for everybody. And we know that we always try to get really great opening acts. And even maybe if we felt like the U2 audience might not necessarily get it on the day, they would remember and they would think back. Yep. And I remember we actually did have Public Enemy open for us on a tour. And we were so excited because we were such fans. But we also realized that in America, music was a bit more segregated and that it probably wasn't what a U2 audience was expecting. But then we discovered that playing in the South, as we did on that tour, some of the venue owners would have been extremely nervous and may have cancelled the gig had they found out that Public Enemy were on the bill. So we never told the venue owners. so U2 would rock up for our show and Public Enemy would be the opening act, and no one knew. And I mean, they were amazing.
It was too late then. Yeah, they were amazing. Always were. Yeah.
Always great.
I think I saw Primus open for you guys somewhere in New York. And I thought that was a great choice too, because Primus is not a band that's maybe built for stadium playing and maybe challenge some of your audience. But I thought it was really, really, really great.
Yeah.
I remember on that tour, there were a lot of U2 fans that were unfamiliar with Rage Against the Machine, but we did a sort of a raged up cover of Bruce Springsteen's The Ghost of Tom Joad on that tour. And Bruce Springsteen fans and U2 might be a bigger overlap. And I remember watching the faces of some of the U2 fans as the music was completely reimagined in a Rage Against the Machine way, as they heard the lyrics and recognized that this band of screaming neo-Marxist Black Sabbath fans was covering a Bruce Springsteen song. I felt this kind of like existential crisis among some.
and now years later, you've been playing with Bruce. How's that?
Yes, it was great. I played on and off over the course of 6 years with the E Street Band, and I am not a casual Bruce Springsteen fan. So for someone who, is a great Bruce fan, he's my only friend to whom I subscribe to a fanzine about. So it's like I'm not a sideman by constitution.
Right.
And there's really only one band that I would be in, somebody else's band, and it would be Bruce Springsteen. He's as advertised and just a great, human being, and his commitment to the excellence of every night's performance is very inspiring.
Yeah. I mean, we've known Bruce for many years and been to see him so many times, and he never holds back an ounce of commitment or energy, blood, sweat, and tears. It goes all into his show. So he is a spent man. At the end of it, Bruce is spent. He can hardly walk. He is so exhausted.
I was playing with Bruce, and I think might have been in Australia, and you see sometimes the same fans on different continents, like the same people. Like literally the same people who come around. And so, even though someone had flown from South Africa or whatever, no one's more excited to be in that room on that night than Bruce Springsteen is. Like he's the most excited person to be there. And so we're playing Australia at some big cricket stadium or whatever. We've been playing 3 hours and 15 minutes, and we've rocked the hits, and he's drained the audience, and he's squeezed every last bit of power out of the night, and everyone would go home saying this is a transcendent night and we've never seen anything like it. And then he says, without irony, "Are you ready to get this party started?" And then we played another hour.
Yeah. I must admit, I'm very impressed with your ability to just know all the songs that he might throw at the band, because that must have been quite a challenge.
A real challenge. That is not from someone who had trouble learning a song in high school, Born to Be Wild in high school. My song learning skills haven't improved that much. I really worked hard. I learned 250 songs before the tour.
Wow.
And then he would regularly take requests.
Right.
And on the last US leg, we played 38 shows, 184 different songs in 38 shows.
Wow.
One show in Connecticut, of the first 7 songs of the night, 6 of them, the E Street Band had never played on that tour. And the 7th song was Jump by Van Halen that we played once.
Oh my goodness. That is
crazy.
Wow.
It's crazy.
That is crazy. You're listening to U2X Radio. I'm The Edge, and I am here with Mr. Tom Morello. Yeah, that tour with Springsteen must have been a highlight, but you've had so many different musical outfits that you've been part of. Well, I suppose Brad and Tim are like your solid go-to guys. They're the constants in so many of them.
Yeah.
But you still have these the acoustic versions.
Sure.
You know? Clearly, you've so many different things that you want to say musically. I just was interested. What was the inspiration to doing so many different acts and different entities?
Yeah, I, like you, imagine myself being in one band my whole life. You know what I mean? Like, I thought, like, I'm going to be in a band and we're going to make 25 records and that's going to, but it didn't work out that way in Rage Against the Machine. We would make records kind of every 4 or 5 years. And during that initial 10-year period of the band, there was a tremendous amount of like tumultuousness and whatnot. And so during those times between records, I started like, I have a motor on me. I like a creative motor that just will not stop. And it was like, I have to remix something or play on somebody's record or go on tour with somebody. And so through those, it's really been an incredible kind of quilt, a diverse quilt of a career. You know, I've played on Pete Seeger records and I've played on Wu-Tang Clan records. And I don't know, there may not be too many guitar players that can say that. But, you know, I've also been blessed
I would say
to play with
no other guitar players could say that.
You know, I've been in a band with Zach De La Rocha and Chris Cornell and Chuck D and Be Real and Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
So I've been blessed with, you know, playing with some of the greatest people that have ever held a microphone.
Yeah.
And so while I imagined my musical life sort of being unidirectional, it's worked out to be this kind of beautiful mosaic.
Yeah, it sure has.
Yep.
That must have been a real loss when you lost him.
Yeah, of course it was. It's a tragedy. It's a wound that will not heal. Like, he was a good friend and a great collaborator, and I never stopped being a fan of his. So had I never known him, I would still be mourning hard for his passing, but it is a real tragedy.
Yeah, he died way too young. What an amazing voice. And it's such a distinctive voice. It's like, whenever you hear it, it's like you immediately, within a bar, you know, it's Chris.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing, like, I had been in, you know, Rage Against the Machine for 10 years before working with Chris, and we were making a record, the first Audioslave record with Rick Rubin. And, you know, Chris was like the singer in my band. I love Chris Cornell's voice. Here's our songs. And Rick's like, you have no idea, like, how fortunate you guys are. He's like, I work with a lot of singers. And the way that Chris could effortlessly pull beautiful and terrifying melodies out of the ether, whether it was a 2-chord chord progression or whether it was some complicated metallic riff, it was effortless with him.
This is Close to the Edge, and I am here with Tom Morello. Beautiful song. Wow. What was the story on that? I mean, how did that one come together?
That was one of those songs that I had, you know, the Rage Against the Machine writing template was very James Brown patterned. Everything comes back to the one. There may not be a single chord change in the entire Rage Against the Machine catalog. Very sort of hip-hop James Brown bass. In Audioslave, it allowed us to expand the sonic palette, you know, in order to get the harmonic interplay with Chris's beautiful voice, to play chords and to play chord progressions. It's something that I had done a lot before Rage Against the Machine. And so it allowed me and Tim and Brad to kind of unlock our melodic box. And the very simple chord progression for Like a Stone, I kind of wrote on acoustic guitar in my bathroom, brought into rehearsal. Tim wrote that beautiful bass line. Brad's simple but compelling heartbeat-like drum beat was there from the beginning, and the guitar solo, which is that kind of anthemic foot on the monitor November Rain solo, was a first take. Yeah. It's the first time we played that song through. That's the solo I played, and I'm glad we recorded it because we used it on the record.
Wow. Isn't it funny how some songs just kind of seem to write themselves? They just...
That's right, yeah.
It's like you just got to get out of the way.
What has been a song for you that's been one of those?
Well, one was one of those songs. That was a case of, we were trapped on one of the upper levels of the Tower of Song, working on another one of the Achtung Baby tunes called Mysterious Ways. And it started out as a never-ending verse and didn't have a chorus. So I was off trying to write a chorus for Mysterious Ways. So I came back in the room and I said to the guys, okay, I've got 2 ideas. This is idea A. What about this? And they listened and, oh, that sounds good. I said, this is idea B. What about this one? And Danny Lanois said, hey, Edge, make one and go into that. A into B into A into B. So I started playing these 2 different cycles of chords, and everyone just went, oh, wow, hold on. Let's just take that idea in the room. And within literally about 15 minutes, Bono had these melodies. There was even, I think, the idea 1 had come out, and The final arrangement took a while because we were originally working very much on a sort of traditional acoustic guitar approach. And Danny Lanois and Brian Eno really helped in terms of fleshing out the arrangement. But the song itself, really quickly. And then there's other songs that you just know there's something there, but it takes an age to kind of refine it, or still your instincts to overcomplicate it is often the way it goes.
Right. Well, that's great. I mean, what a great production suggestion by Daniel Lanois. Like, to like go, let's step away from Mysterious Ways for a second, and, hearing those two riffs back to back as a completely different thing. Sometimes it can be an outside voice that helps sort of steer something into an all-time great song.
And I'm here with Tom Morello. So then the Prophets of Rage, Chuck D, how did that come together?
Sure. It was actually during the 2016 election cycle here in the United States, and I saw a CNN chyron that read, "Donald Trump rages against the machine." I thought, you don't get that. Nope. No. And at the time, rage was not a unit. And so I called up Tim and Brad. I said, we've got to do something more than tweet about what is happening in our country right now. And, a snarky tweet only goes so far. And we have this, this catalog of material, and these are desperate times demanding some desperate songs. So we spoke, and I called up Chuck D, and he was a little bit of a reluctant bride at first. He's a very busy man doing a lot of kind of other stuff, but then DJ Lord and Be Real joined the fold. And for 4 years, we rocked the globe. And I really think that like a set list can be a crucial part of art and of music. And so to be able to like write a set list from drawing from the catalogs of Public Enemy, Cypress Hill, Rage Against the Machine, Audio Slave, and Prophets of Rage original material was like a dream for me. Like we had set lists that were just like flattening.
What an amazing, it was a great pool to draw from. This is The Edge. You're listening to U2X Radio, and I'm here with Tom Morello. I mean, that's a pinnacle song right there.
Yeah, right on, man. Thank you.
Really amazing. So what's next for you guys? You've put Rage Against the Machine back together for some shows. Is that going to continue? Are we going to get another album?
We had a tour booked, and then the sky fell and coronavirus came up, but we rebooked the tour. We're hopeful for summer of 2021. In the meantime, I've just been trying to stay sane, keep family sane with a moderate success, and actually have a brand new song with Dan, the singer of Imagine Dragons, Shay Diamond, who is a Black trans singer and activist, and producer Bloody Beetroots, a song in response to the current racial unrest and global solidarity surrounding that unrest, a song called Stand.
Oh, fantastic. I actually had the pleasure of playing with Brad at the LA Women's March.
Oh, yes.
Which was so fun.
I think I saw a clip of that. Yeah. Great.
Juliet and Abby Travis, we put the band together like a couple of days, had one rehearsal and just went for it. I mean,
he's a great drummer. Yeah. There's no one like him. He too has someone who's really has a unique niche in the history of rock and roll. When it comes to sort of making a stadium bounce, like whatever it is he's doing does the trick.
It's that swing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I'm going to let you go. It's been such a pleasure, Tom, as always. A gentleman, man. But a man who puts his rage to good use is what I would say.
I really appreciate it. And I've been a huge fan of your work from day one, from buying my records in Harvard Square back in the day and looking at that poster on the wall to, going on tour with you to, being friends through these years. So I appreciate the music and the friendship through all these years.
Oh, thank you.